we're looking so forward to practicing with you over this weekend.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Very good to be here. Very good to be here. Very good to see so many faces joining us tonight. What I thought we would do, let's go ahead and start with the Dharma opening verse, and then we'll go from there.
I'm gonna do the share screen.
The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth. So very good. And again, welcome everyone. So glad to see you all here. Look forward to practicing together over the next few days. I think we have a very interesting, interesting agenda, so to speak. I think if I would encourage everybody, if you haven't already, to look at the retreat guide. That's really got almost everything you need to know. The link to the session is always right there along the right-hand side. And of course, any trouble, Fusats and Cosets are your best friends to help you get back online here. But I want to say that I appreciate the words. I think probably everybody's fairly well acclimated, but again, if there are any questions, we'll have a little time at the end of my talk to bring up anything as well. But I wanted to start by saying just a few things about Sesshin and a few things about a retreat. And I think many of you probably are veterans. Some of you may not be, and I don't know that it matters. But what I want to say is the most important thing, I think, when it comes to a meditation retreat is dive into the schedule. A lot of times throughout our day, we have all kinds of choices and we don't know whether to go here, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. It's very clear now. If we want to know what to do next, we get our schedule and we follow the schedule. So this is like any retreat. The schedule's sort of taken care of for you. And this can really help our meditation practice in that we are taking care of whatever is on the schedule. When we are at break periods for meals or whatever, use that time to refresh yourself, to get ready to come back and participate in the retreat. So those are a couple of things, I think are like priority number one. Sesshin, the typical word we use for retreats in Zen, is a combination of setsu and shin. Setsu means gathering, so bringing together, gather. And shin means heart, mind. So our retreat is about bringing our whole being together, unifying ourselves, all of us together, and us individually in this moment. The only way we can come together is in this moment. And what I like to say is the best way to gather yourself is to stop our incessant activity of scattering ourselves, the monkey mind business. So Sesshin is bringing heart, mind together and bringing it together in this moment. So try to always, throughout the retreat, whether on the cushion or listening to a talk, try to remain present. Bring yourself back to the present moment and be fully engaged. This is kind of the heart of our retreat. And so I want to encourage that. Dogen had the expression, dropping body and mind. And so this just means dropping all of the attachment to objects that arise, whether it be through our senses or our thinking mind. And so we want to be aware of it because this is how we are aware of the present moment, but we do not want to dwell on it. This is a non-dwelling practice. So I encourage everyone to ground yourselves in body, breath, and mind. So ground yourself in the physical posture on the cushion, and ground yourself in being wide awake and in your Zazen practice, but also ground yourself in the breath in the lower abdomen. Let this be a real grounding activity of breathing naturally and allowing the lower abdomen to be the focal point for this deeper and deeper breathing as your meditation continues. And then with the mind, always maintain, what are we doing now? If you catch yourself daydreaming about something going on later or something happened earlier in the day, just as soon as you catch yourself, just always come back and reaffirm the present. So let this moment inform us of what needs to be done. Be fully trusting in this moment. So anyway, just a few things that I like to say at the beginning of a retreat. So first I would like to talk a little bit about the theme of our retreat. And so I'd like to talk about the theme, and this is certainly our focus for the retreat. So it's Hanamatsuri Precepts Retreat. So we're combining, as was said earlier, the notion of Hanamatsuri is Festival of Flowers, but it's Buddha's birthday. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The precepts are very important teaching of the Buddha, which very much intertwine with this idea of the blooming of flowers and spring, along with Hanamatsuri. So I want to talk about that. We say vows in bloom. So really, it's our intentions that really makes up our vows. So we're talking about our intentions are in bloom. And how do we create and how do we encourage our intentions to grow and deepen and strengthen and keep our practice strong? We're going to be looking over the next few days at the precepts, and some of the teachings of the Buddha's birth to help give us insight into that and hopefully give us much to draw from. But the other part of this title we have is we recognize that we are still, and maybe we are always, but in particular now, we are living in very challenging times. And so we want to make this very relevant to this and see what the precepts can do to help us take care of these difficult times. What is to be done during these challenging times? So we are bringing together the teachings of the Buddha's birth and his Bodhisattva precepts, teachings, which instruct us on how to navigate the Buddha way and awaken to our true nature. During these challenging times and at this retreat, grounded in our Zazen practice, we want to look deeply at this wisdom for guidance. So I'd like to start and kind of set the stage, let's say, by talking a little bit about the Buddha's birth. Very interesting story. We have a number of legends and history about this that I want to talk about. And so first of all, I think most everybody knows the Buddha was born in northeast India. His father was the king. Shuddhodana was the king. He was King Shuddhodana Gautama. And he was the king of this kingdom. And it was called the Shakya kingdom and the Shakya clan, which is the kind of the family that grew into a clan and made up the most of the population of the state. The queen was Queen Maya, and that was his, though the king had several wives, Maya was his number one. He was his main wife at that time. And so the capital was Kapilavastu, and that is where they lived. And it was there. This is in the foothills of the Himalaya mountains, and right along the Rohini River. So you can imagine, the foothills, and so the beauty of that country. But they had been married 20 years and no children. So kind of interesting. So fast forward, and this is around the Midsummer Festival time in late July. One night, Queen Maya had a dream that was quite vivid about an elephant entering her side. And so the narrative on this goes as follows. I'm going to read this. It says, she felt herself being carried away by 4 divas high up in the mountains to Lake Anatata. After bathing her in the lake, the divas clothed her in heavenly clothes, anointed her with perfumes, and bedecked her with divine flowers. Soon after, a white elephant, holding a white lotus flower in his trunk, appeared and went along around her 3 times and entered her womb through the right side. So she woke up, and she was obviously at this point with child. And upon awakening, the queen knew that she had has been delivered a very important message, because an elephant is the symbol of greatness in India. And so the king summoned the local wise men of the day to interpret this dream. And so many of you know this part of the story, but the wise men said the following. They said that the queen would give birth to a son, and that if the son did not leave the household, lived a secular life, he would become a great world ruler. However, if he would leave the household, renounce secular life, he would become a fully awakened Buddha. So this was quite an auspicious, amazing thing that transpired. Of course, everybody in the village, in the town, in the country was very excited about this development. So you can imagine the enthusiasm, the excitement that a prince was born. And so fast forward again, and we get close to the time of the Buddha's birth. And the custom of the time was for the mother, the wife who was pregnant, the woman that was pregnant, to go to their family for the birth, to be with her mother, I assume, and to that family. So a whole entourage was on its way to the nearby Coleus country. It was also a tribe and a state that was nearby where she lived. And en route, they were going to the capital, and it was in Nepal, current day Nepal. Well, en route, they decided to take a break and rest at Lumbini Garden. And Lumbini Garden was a famous garden, quite beautiful, and it still exists actually to this day. But at the time, it had Ashoka trees were very prominent, and large Ashoka trees, and they were all magnificently in bloom. So they stopped, they made some tea, and were resting. And at some point, the queen reaches and touches the tree to steady herself. And it is said in legend, the baby was born. The baby Buddha was born. And so then the baby Buddha was washed with the tea that had been provided, been put together and made for them to rest. And so this, we understand, was around the year 566 BC. So more than 500 years BC is when we believe the Buddha to be actually born. So this is some of the legend that comes to us. And so Hanamatsuri literally in Japanese means festival of flowers and flower festival. And so this is where we take the name for our ceremony around the Buddha's birth. And on Sunday, we will have a ceremony that will be a Hanamatsuri ceremony along with a precepts reaffirmation ceremony. And so the Hanamatsuri ceremony is a reenactment of this joyous time around the Buddha's birth. And thus our traditional Hanamatsuri, bathing the Buddha and with tea and placing a flower on the altar where the Buddha is sitting, became a significant ceremony that is still very prominent to this day in Japan. So I remember myself when I first started coming to the Zen Buddhist Temple of Chicago in the early 70s. I remember one Hanamatsuri going to the temple, and the altar was a fairly large altar covered with flowers, one after another. And so it was quite a show. It was quite dramatic and beautiful. And Matsuoka Roshi was officiating, and the altar, and during the chanting, everybody there came up, poured tea over the Buddha, and offered a flower and put at the feet of the baby Buddha. So this reenactment and the Buddha's of this Buddha's birth helps us cultivate the joyfulness and gratitude and deepens our understanding of Buddha's teaching around interdependence and oneness of all things. So I'd like to share with you some of the words of Matsuoka Roshi that he gave at one of these occasions at Hanamatsuri. He said the following: "On this occasion, sweet tea is ladled over the infant statue as an act of devotion to the fully enlightened one. When we pour the sweet tea over the figure of the infant Buddha, it symbolizes cleansing our own body and mind. Zen is Shu Sho Ichi Nyo. Practice and enlightenment are one. The dust of our bodies and minds separating us from enlightenment are swept away by the sweet tea. It is on this day that we joyfully remember the birth of the Buddha and his life on earth. We are joyful because his life taught us how we can now become enlightened also. We think of his birth and his life on earth like the beautiful unfolding petals of a flower on a warm sunlit, in the warm sunlight. And we honor him by placing a flower on the altar at the foot of his statue." So again, I think from his words, Matsuoka Roshi, I think pretty well sets the tone for the significance of this ceremony. And after the baby was born, we know he was given the name Siddhartha, which means every wish fulfilled, or one who has accomplished one's aim. So quite an appropriate name. So further, the legend of the Buddha's birth goes on, and when he was amongst all of these flowers, it is said in the garden, it is said that the infant took 7 steps, and then pointing one finger to the heaven and one finger to the earth, he proclaimed, "I alone am the most honored one in heaven and earth." This is the image of the infant Buddha on the altar that is bathed with tea that we have at our ceremony. So these words foretell the teaching of the Buddha after he was awakened during his lifetime. The Buddha taught that all the universe and are interdependent and one. He observed the true nature of the universe in his complete awakening when he was 35 years old. He declared, "How beautiful! All beings are endowed with this inherent Buddha nature." This is what Buddha is declaring when he explained that he alone is the most honored one. From the perspective of our innate Buddha nature that we all have in common. This is the most honored one between heaven and earth. So after Buddha's awakening, when he was 35, we know that he spent the rest of his life teaching how all beings can awaken to their own true nature. And central to this teaching was meditation practice and the Bodhisattva precept teachings. In his last discourse, it's the sutra of his last discourse when he's on his deathbed. He said the following: "Monks, after my death, respect and follow the Bodhisattva precepts. If you do, you will be like a person who has been given light in the dark, or a pauper who has acquired a great treasure." So I like very much the words that Matsuoka Roshi expressed at that Hanamatsuri, especially the comment where he says, "The dust of our bodies and mind separating us from enlightenment are swept away by the sweet tea." And then further on, he says, "We think of his birth and his life on earth like the beautiful unfolding petals of a flower in the warm sunlight." The Buddha's meditation and Bodhisattva precepts teaching is the sweet tea that cleanses our body and mind, and the warm sunlight that helps bring forth the flowering of our Buddha nature. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes refreshing everybody's mind about the precepts and kind of setting the stage for the precepts, and we'll be talking about them over the next few days. The precepts initially started as very practical rules and regulations that people in the Sangha should follow back in the early time of when the Sangha and the order was just beginning. Just whenever there was a disagreement or wherever there was a dispute or wherever there's a problem, the Buddha would think about it and come up with a rule that would hopefully take care of it. And so over time, this became quite voluminous. Many things came up, and so it became a little bit unwieldy. Some of these things kind of went out of date even, like for example, cotton was once considered a luxurious fabric. It wasn't very common. And so it was ruled that nobody could use cotton to sew their robes or use for their cushions or anything because of jealousy and this kind of behavior. But obviously over time, that rule became obsolete with cotton becoming much more common. So over time, the precepts evolved from that kind of prescribing the norms of conduct to now describing the various aspects of who we truly are. So now it gives us more insight into our true nature. So this is a very important shift, and I think this makes the precepts, studying the precepts, very rich. And we'll look into this tonight and over the next few days. So these precepts, as we look at them, help us know and wake up to who we truly are. It's interesting that the formal Zen path, we talk about, you receive the precepts. This is just beginning the path of the Buddha. This is acknowledging this is my path and I'm going to start walking the path. We call this Jukai. Zaikei is when you are studying with a teacher. Maybe you're taking discipleship. Shukei is when you become a novice priest. You're training to be a full priest. And then finally, when you are transmitted through the Shiho ceremony, in all four of these stages, formal stages, we once again review and receive the precepts. And so it goes to our deepening and evolving understanding of the value of the precepts, how to work with the precepts. And so it really is a lesson in how we continue to work with them and whether or not we are on the formal path. We will be doing a reaffirmation ceremony on Sunday, as I mentioned. So it's a time for us to rededicate ourselves to this teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha's path is an ongoing refinement of our understanding of the precepts and how to live the precepts. So I think this is very true. Dogen said Buddhism is about studying ourselves and getting to know ourselves and letting go of our self-centeredness. And so this is very much what the precepts are pointing us to. So let's take a moment. I'd like to just review the precepts with you a little bit and kind of with some context that we can sort of have a foundation as we talk about them more in the coming days. So essentially, all of the precepts come out of, and this makes sense, it comes out of be Buddha. So the teaching of the precepts is be Buddha. And if it was that easy, that would be the only precept we would need. Be your own true nature. Everything, you are complete. As the Buddha said, everything emerges from taking refuge in the Buddha. So we say take refuge in the Buddha. We say be Buddha. It's synonymous. Be the enlightened one. Be one with your own true nature. All of these things are what is implied by I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in my own true nature. But as we expand out to kind of have a little more context around the precepts, we have developed what we call the three treasures. So it is, I take refuge in the Buddha. And these are, the three treasures are sort of the manifestation or the foundation of be Buddha. So we say, I take refuge in the Buddha or be Buddha. So this is, we can say I take refuge in the historical Buddha because we do follow his teaching. We follow his example. But even more poignant, we are taking refuge in our true nature. We then also take refuge in the Dharma. So be Dharma. This is the Buddha's teaching, yes, but it's also reality. What is the true reality all around us? This is what the Buddha was pointing to throughout his teaching career. And then finally, taking refuge in the Sangha. Initially, I think this was mostly thought to be taking refuge in the community that is following the Buddha's path. But in the larger sense, it is taking refuge in the oneness of the interdependency of all things. And so these three things, taking refuge in my own true nature, taking refuge in reality, and taking refuge in the reality of the oneness of all things. This is a very large, all-encompassing notion. So this is what we call the three treasures. And you know, in Buddhism, whenever we are ringing a bell during ceremony 3 times, we are always evoking this notion of the 3 treasures. Then next, we have the 3 pure precepts. This is really pointing to, as we are pursuing the precepts, what are our intentions? You know, what is our purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? So this is setting our intentions properly, because if our intentions are selfish, this will just undo all the effort we're trying to put into it. And so there are 3 pure precepts, and they are as follows: not creating evil, do no harm. So that's the first one. So we don't want to do any harm with whatever we do. Our intentions are to do good. You know, there may be unexpected consequences that may surprise us and we may learn something, but our intentions were not to create that. Our intentions were good. The second one is practice good, do only good. So we keep kind of hammering on this idea of we're trying to do what's best for all beings, not just for myself. And then finally, purifying intentions. Continue to refine my understanding of what pure intentions are and make sure that we do good for all beings. So those are the 3 pure precepts where we continue to reaffirm and work on our intentions. And then we come to what we call the 10 grave precepts. And this is where, you know, I sometimes I say, this is where the rubber hits the road. You know, it's like, this is where we put our aspirations into action. Okay, it's one thing to have aspirations. Now, how do we behave in life in this world to support the precepts? And so these are some guidelines about what to do and what not to do. So here's the first 5. Affirm life, do not kill. Be giving, do not take what is not freely given. Honor the body, do not engage in sexual misconduct. Manifest truth, do not speak falsely. And proceed clearly, do not cloud the mind with intoxicants. And I usually, you know, I like to say with these are pretty clear. You know, these are what we would probably all of us agree that, oh yes, these are things that we should not, we should follow. We should not kill. You know, even though there may be times when killing has to happen to eat food, under a number of circumstances, but in general, we shouldn't have a strategy where I'm going to murder people, you know, of course, and on we go. But I think the next 5 of the precepts, they are in a way, they're a little closer to home, and I think they're very interesting and very poignant. And I think these may give us even more pause to look in a mirror ourselves about our behavior. And they go like this. See only your own faults. Do not discuss the faults of others. Know yourself and others as one. Do not praise yourself at others' expense. Share generously. Do not spare the Dharma assets. So be generous. Actualize harmony. Do not indulge in anger. And number 10, know intimacy with all things. You know, and understand this interdependency of all things. And do not defame the 3 treasures. Do not speak ill or think ill of the 3 treasures, which is who we truly are. So so these are the 10 grave precepts. And I do think this idea about do not discuss the faults of others. Do not praise yourself at others' expense. You know, these come a little closer to home sometimes. And so I think this is good. I think it's very good instruction to be looking at what may seem to be very obvious, but the ones that are less obvious, but are very much driving our sense of self and are driving our selfishness the more we behave in these activities of praising ourselves at others' expense. So remember, it may not be possible not to violate the precepts at times. The point is our effort to clarify our understanding and cultivate letting go of our self-centeredness, cultivating skillfulness, and waking up to our true nature. And if we find that we have dishonored a precept, what do? We acknowledge this and endeavor to proceed more skillfully. So this is part of the process of working with the precepts. We learn sometimes by breaking the precepts, we learn how to follow them more diligently. So I just want to close with a couple of remarks. You know, this idea of working with ourselves, this is part and parcel to what the Buddha taught. And almost every teacher since the Buddha. Keizan Jokin, very important patriarch in Japan, he said, our Zen practice enables us to open and clarify the mind ground and peacefully abide within the original place, allowing the natural clarity of our original true nature to come forth. So like a flower coming more and more fully in bloom. In our Zen practice, we say, very common words are, moment to moment we find our way. We just take care of each moment of our lives. This is all we can do. Take complete care of whatever's coming up in our life. We don't know what is coming up. All we can do is vow to do our best to take complete care of it. Taking care of everything that comes up in our life is our practice. This is our bodhisattva practice, and this is our path. So the title of this talk, Vows in Bloom. Remember, the Buddha's meditation and bodhisattva precepts teaching is the sweet tea that cleanses our body and mind, and the warm sunlight that helps bring forth the flowering of our Buddha nature. In the coming days, I look forward to looking more closely with all of you at the teaching surrounding the Buddha's birth and the bodhisattva precepts. So thank you all for listening. And if there's any comments or questions, I would be very happy to see hands. And I think, what do we have? We have maybe 10, 15 minutes, something like that.
Yep. And for questions, folks, please don't be shy. If you know how to use the raise your hand feature in the Zoom application, just do that, or just raise your hand. So Kosetsu and I will try to make it easy for folks to ask questions. So please do not be shy. If you have questions, comments, please do share. Yes, Walter.
First, I'm sorry I'm hard to understand, but last serve, since I'm also talked about Buckminster Fuller, and Buckminster Fuller said one day he woke up and he said he was just going to do whatever he think was the most important thing he could do for the rest of the world that day. And that's how he lived his life. So it sounds like he was a bodhisattva too.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Walter. Very good. No, I think we all agree that Buckminster Fuller was a very good, very great bodhisattva. And yes, that wisdom very much resonates with what we're talking about this evening around this moment. There's nothing more important than this moment. You know, this is the only moment that we can be active and we can do something. We can't do something in the future. We can't do something in the past. We can only do something in the present. And so Zen practice is very much about how do we take care of this moment? How do we actualize this moment? You know, how do we actualize our true nature in this moment? Very important teaching. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything? So yeah, so we have a schedule before us. If there's any clarity needed, please reach out, let us know. But look forward very much to seeing you guys over the next coming days. We've got a number of different venues for us to interact and discuss the precepts and Buddha's teachings, along with Zazen. I was once talking about this retreat to a friend and explaining all the different things that we're doing during the retreat. And I said, and don't forget, we are practicing Zazen too. This is very much the foundation of our practice. So that is definitely there. I think let's do this. Let's close with the 4 great vows. And then we'll take just a little break, stretch our legs just a little bit, and we'll have Zazen. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Very good, everyone. Thank you all for listening. And let's take just a little moment, let's take a moment or two to change. I'm going to reorientate our camera a little bit and get things set up here for Zazen. And you may want to do the same or take a short break. And we'll resume at the top of the hour.